Hello and welcome to the 6th video in my series on how to make 3ds Max a little bit easier, sort of tips and tricks. In this part I'll be going over creating objects in ways you might not have thought of, including spline object creation and compound objects. Okay, just to start off I want to draw your attention to a couple of primitives you might not be using much, but are quite useful. Torus is a nice one to make a little donut, good for things like steering wheels or, well, donuts. Tube, if you're using a cylinder and making this kind of a shape, stop, because tube's right there, dead easy. And finally another one that I use that isn't very well drawn attention to is capsule, which is nice for sort of sci-fi stuff, adding onto the sides of machine objects and that kind of stuff. So those primitives are right there, saves you a little bit of time if you start from something that looks about right. Another one, people tend to use a sphere when they're making objects they intend to unwrap, and get troubled by the pinching at the top and the bottom. A nicer way to make a sphere that has a more even mesh distribution, polygon distribution, is to actually start with a box. 10 by 10 by 10. I'm going to put it in the middle of my scene, and let's make it a cube, and we use the spherify modifier. What that'll do is it'll make it look like a sphere, but the benefit here is we now have a more even mesh distribution. If I turn off Y, as you can see the smoothing's not quite set up right, so I'll just use a smooth modifier to fix that. You can do this in edit poly obviously as well, but smooth is obviously, being a modifier, a little bit more versatile. And that makes a nice sphere, fairly triangle efficient, and also a nice mesh flow that'll unwrap very well. And obviously it already has, if you go and unwrap it, you can see that it already has an unwrap on it already. So if I apply a checker pattern now, you can see, admittedly there is sort of stretching and stuff, but it's not horrible, and in some ways better than the original sphere and what that looks like when you apply a checker onto it. Onto spline object creation. Go to the shapes panel. This is where all of your splines are, and other shapes. Let's start with a rectangle, and I'll just show you very basic principles of what a spline is. It is I'll turn off the grid and the bounding box so you can see. It's just sort of lines. You can think of it a little bit like edges without faces, if you're used to working with editable polys. And to make it into an editable poly, we have to make it, I mean, you can apply an edit poly modifier and it will just become a flat plane, but more likely you want to do maybe an extrude to it, and you can do that as a modifier, and that will push it up and make it into a box. So that's quite useful to do. Other ways of using splines are lofts, which I'll show you shortly, and lathe, which I'll show you now. So to make a lathe object, I'm going to turn the grid back on so you know what I'm looking at. I'm going to jump into my left viewport, and I'm going to start by making a line which gives me complete control. Now there are lots of commands you can use to control, using Control, Alt and Shift, how to make your lines curved straight off the bat, but to be honest with you they're a bit of a challenge to get your head around, and what I tend to do is just make straight lines where I know I want my points to be. You can hold down Shift to force a straight line, and make it that way, and then edit the spline afterwards. So jump into verts. I'm going to make all of these Bezier corners, which allows me to move both handles in order to make this, oh goodness, oh, it's because I'm not in move, in order to make this a nice looking kind of wine glass is what I'm going for right here. So I'll probably pull this one in a little bit, and oops, this up and over. If you're finding, like right now, it's locked to just one axis, what's happened is you've clicked on the x-axis and that locks it. One of the most frustrating features of spline modeling. I really don't know what they were thinking on that one. But just click the middle, this yellow bit here, and you can see no longer is the x-axis yellow, but the box is yellow, and that means you can move it in both axes. Okay, what we've got here is the profile of a wine glass, of half of a wine glass. And what we're going to do is we're going to kind of, if I jump into perspective, we're going to be kind of rotating it around the middle of the scene, and that'll be what's making our actual object. And we're going to use the lathe modifier, is what does that. So you can see that's almost there. It's got the axis in slightly the wrong place, so I'll just go into axis and move that to 0, 0, 0. It's already, just by chance I guess, set up okay, but what can quite often happen is it starts spinning it in the wrong direction. For example, it might look like this, and that's just spinning it around in a different direction, not the one you wanted. So just try hitting X, Y and Z, and if the axis is in the wrong place, do what I just did there and move it to where you need it to be, so 0, 0, 0. It's a good idea to have weld core on, and sometimes if they're facing the wrong way, like they are now, just tick flip normals, and that'll get that working. Okay, one scenario that I've found myself in before now is wanting to make something like a circle shape with subdivisions on it that are kind of, they seem organic, but they are evenly spread. One kind of cheeky way to do that that's quite easy, I'm going to make a circle, and I'm going to use something called Garment Maker. And this isn't really the purpose of Garment Maker, but it's a nice little feature that you can use. If you apply a Garment Maker modifier to a spline, it must be a shape, you can't apply it to a editable poly. You'll see, if I'll turn off the grid and the gizmo, you can see you have quite a nice non-uniform spread of triangles, which is great for displacing and that kind of thing. And I'll be using this in the next part of this video series. But to use Garment Maker, you can increase the density here, but before you do that, I strongly advise you untick Auto Mesh, because this may not happen to everybody's copy of Max, but for mine, if it's on Auto Mesh, it will crash very, very easily. So let's try something twice as high. Instead of ticking Auto Mesh, I'm just going to click Mesh it, and there we go. It'll make it a lot denser, lots more triangles. You'd be surprised, sort of, if you're making ground, how good this actually works out as. And being triangles, they're a little bit more kind of efficient in terms of geometry than quads. And as long as you're not too bothered about needing any sensible mesh flow, they're pretty nice to work with. Okay, let's move on to compound objects. First compound object I'm going to look at requires me to have two shapes. I'm going to show you loft first of all. And I'm going to make a line. I'm going to do it in my front viewport, so I'll turn the grid on so you can see what's going on a little bit. And I'm going to make kind of like a flower type thing, I guess. I'm just going to draw 2 points there, right click to stop drawing, and start changing these, and I'll just make these both right click and change these to Bezier corner again, and start moving these around just to look a little bit more like the shape that a stem might take. That'll do. If you want to increase the, it's interpolating the gaps here, but you'll see these are still straight lines with several points. You can change the how smooth that is, but if I drop that down, you'll see what I'm talking about. So this is just 2 steps. 1 step is just a 0 steps is just a straight line. I guess that must have been. There must be a point somewhere in there. It's hard to see, and just drag that up. And the beauty of of having these splines is we can actually change this at any time, particularly with the loft modifier I'm about to show you. You can go back in and change this to make it smoother if that's what you want, or even move your points around. So really, really flexible. We're then going to, the idea here is we're going to sort of draw in 3D a shape running through this one. So if you can imagine a circle going through this, we'll make a kind of stem. So we'll draw that circle now. Again, must be a shape, so in the create shapes, splines, I'll just make a circle. And you can fiddle around with it if you don't want a circle. You can do any kind of shape, but a circle is what I'm after right now. Doesn't need to be any more complicated than that. I will select the path that the loft is going to take. I'll go into the Create tab, and under Geometry, it's in Compound Objects, and we're going to use Loft. We've already got our path, so all I need to do is click Get Shape, and we'll grab the circle here, and we can see now what it's doing. So you can see it's drawing like a circle through the shape of the spline, which is great. Okay, so under Skin Parameters we can control, like the interpolations we had before, just how kind of round, if I look at this end on, round our circle is. So if I take that way down, we can end up with a very not interpolated circle and more interpolated. And we can do the same with paths, the path as well. So here we have, like we were controlling the interpolation on the spline before, we can control that from here. So to make it nice and smooth if that's what you want, or make it nice and low poly if that's what you need. We can also do some fun stuff. I'm going to actually, so you can see this a little bit clearer, I'm going to crank these right up here, and I'm going to go into deformations and use scale. Scale is quite a nice one. What this is doing here is controlling how large my shape is through the full distance of the spline. So at the minute it's 100% size at the beginning and 100% size at the end, so it looks very even in shape. But if I take this one down to about 0, you can see that it's getting much smaller in shape, which is really cool. So I want mine to be a little bit thinner all around, and we'll go for about there. If you want some change in size, what you can do is you can use Insert Corner Point, put a couple of points on there, and you can increase this to where you want. So now we've made a kind of kink in there, and these, just like splines, you can make these Beziers as well. So if we go with Bezier Smooth, we can see we're actually making this a much more blobby shape. So lots of really cool stuff in the Loft. And a cool thing about Loft is we can actually change things like the path after we've already made the Loft. So let's say we're doing other things in our scene and we decide maybe we want this path to go in a slightly different way. We just expand Loft, click on Path, go to Line. Let's hide unselected just to get rid of that. And unfortunately this is kind of in the way, but it's kind of useful as a little preview to leave this up. So we just select our points that we want to change. And we can just move these now, and we'll see the changes to the finished spline as we move things around, which is really cool. Something that would be really difficult to do if you're using an editable poly, or you would be losing quality. Whereas now we're always generating this in a nice even way. So really neat, I think. Okay, I'll show you now another little compound object that you can use. Let's say we want to have lots of these plants in our I don't know, field, and oh, that's a shame, I deleted my other thing. No matter, I'll just quickly make a cylinder. Let's pretend like I was using that nice shape I had from before. Just basic cylinder, and we want to make our objects sort of all across this shape. What I'm going to do first is I'm going to duplicate this as a copy. I'm going to make it an editable poly. I'm going to pick the top face, and I'm going to invert my selection and delete everything else. So I've just got the top face. I'm going to name this scatter distribution. Okay, and I'll show you what that looks like now. So hide everything else, and you can see I've just got a plane right exactly where the top of my sphere is. Now I'm going to I'll show everything again. Okay, now that we've got our distribution object, we're almost ready to scatter our initial object across the surface. We need to make sure that the axis is that this object is set up right, so that when it's perpendicular it is positioned in the right place. For some reason my scatter always makes a mess of this unless I use reset X form. So first of all I'll make sure my pivot is in the correct position and pointing the right way up, so that looks about good there. And then I'll go into utilities and reset my X form. This is under more if you've not got it. I did show you how to do this earlier on, and we'll collapse that down into an editable poly. Okay, now let's go into compound objects, click on scatter. we need to pick our distribution object. This is the sort of disk we made on top of the cylinder. I'll pick by name just so I don't accidentally click. Scatter distribution was the name I gave it, and we can see it's placed one instance of my object on this. To increase the number of these, just increase the duplicates, and we can see it's starting to scatter it. To change the style in which it's scattering, you can use area, which scatters across the area a little bit more comfortably. Or you can use other useful ones along sort of at face centers is quite nice if you want it very even. But generally area and even tend to be the ones I use, or volume. If you want to create 3D objects in a distributed volume, you can make a volume to encompass all of where you want the scatter to take place. So that can be quite useful. Okay, the last thing I want to show you is Proboolean. Now, you would think that Proboolean is a lot more useful than it actually is. I haven't found myself using it very often, but I'll show it anyway. So let's make a box, and let's say we want to cut into this box or cut out of it using a cylinder. I'm going to show you again AutoGrid, really useful for making things in the direction you want them to. Nice and easy to do. I like AutoGrid. I'm going to try and start leaving it on more often. Okay, so let's say we want to subtract this yellow cylinder from the box, kind of boring a hole into it. Go into Compound Objects, choose Proboolean whilst you've got the box selected. We want to subtract, so we go and start picking and choose the objects we want to subtract from the original object we had selected, and we click the cylinder. And you can see it's now cut a hole into the box. You can also use Proboolean. Let's make another Proboolean to add the other objects to it. We can see that this now creates geometry which adds to it. Why this is not good if you're doing real-time assets is you end up essentially, although you can't see these right now, you cut your original face. Bear in mind these used to be 2 triangles each face. If I untick in display properties edges only, you can see we're actually cutting our face lots and lots of times just to make sure that we're welded to this object. And there are really very few circumstances in a real-time engine that you would need to do something like that. It's much better to just leave it as having the 2 faces. So if we go back and I go back on edges only, you can see now we've just got the 2 faces. Generally that is better off. And when it comes to cutting into it, yeah, it can be necessary, but if you can get away with doing it as a normal map, then because obviously cutting into something isn't going to affect the silhouette, then normal map is perfectly suitable. Maybe not for something as extreme as this, but yeah, so Proboolean is there. May be useful for you. One thing I forgot to mention is it's possible to make a shape which you can use with all your spline modelling from edges in a model. So let's say we want to make kind of a ring around where this is, like using a circle loft through this outermost ring. We can do that. Fastest way to pick that will probably be holding down Control, clicking that, and deselecting these ones. So we've got this ring in here. We go to Create Shape, bring up the little box. We want linear. That's fine. I mean, you can use smooth too. In fact, I'll use smooth. That shouldn't really make too much difference. Just gives us the option to interpolate it. We then use that shape, which what have we called it? Shape 01 here. So I'll select that. I'll now just very quickly make a circle. In fact, you know what? I've done circle before. Let's make a rectangle just to show that it can be done. And we're going to use the shape we just grabbed and the rectangle here to make a new kind of loft operation. So let's very quickly do that, and you'll see immediately the benefit of getting shapes from your geometry that you've already made. So let's grab a shape, and we'll take that down a few steps. So skin parameters we don't need. I'll take wires off so you can see what's happening. So fewer shape steps should be fine, and let's go with yeah, that's looking about good. In fact, we can probably take that down to and if we want to change the scale of it, we can jump into scale. And I'm just going to change the scale of both of these, so select them both and just drag those down to a more suitable size. Let's go with that, and you can see how that can be useful. Or we could have used a circle, which would probably be more a better way to use it, but you can also use it to let's say we want to grab this face here and inset it by that much. Take that, grab this here, and we can use that to make a circle loft through it. And it's sort of, when you start thinking in these ways, you start to realize that actually you can do quite a lot with spline modeling that is much faster than whatever other technique you may have used if you didn't know about it. That's all I was going to cover in this part. Next part I'll be covering modifiers, and I'll be using a couple of the objects I made in this little part here. So I'll see you there. Thanks for watching.